Hello and welcome back to GoldStockTrades.com. Today we have with us Richard Spencer, President and CEO of U3O8 Corporation. U3O8 can be traded on the venture as UWE, and it also can be traded on the OTCQX as UWEFF. Thanks, Richard, for being here with us today.
Pleasure, Jed. Thanks for having me.
Richard, can you tell us what distinguishes U3O8 from other uranium exploration companies?
Jeb, I think there are two things. The first is that we're growing very, very quickly. In just over a year, we have taken a resource of 7 million pounds and increased that overall resource to almost 50 million pounds. So it puts the company in a situation where it's emerging from being a typical junior to the 50 million pound range, where the medium-sized uranium companies are located. So we're growing from being a typical junior right through to being one of the mid-sized uranium companies around the world. The second thing is that we have a very simple growth strategy. We're operating in 3 countries in South America, and we are growing the resources on those projects very, very quickly. So we're growing organically, and we also have the possibility of growing through acquisitions as well. We have outstanding projects which put us create value for the shareholder, but also put us in a situation where we might be able to see value in other companies as well. So an emerging company and also a company that's got a very quick resource growth profile.
And recently we've seen some incredible resource growth at your multi-commodity project in Colombia. Could you tell us more about that project and about having that multi-commodity mix? Is that an advantage?
Jeb, it absolutely is. It's called the Berlin Project, and it's right in the middle of Colombia, between the capital Bogota and one of the main cities called Medellin. It's very well located, very close, 10 kilometers from a hydroelectric power plant, and access is good. Now, being multi-commodity is a great advantage. Our principal commodities in that project are uranium, vanadium, phosphate, and rare earths as well. Now, that is an advantage in that any one of those commodities can go through an up cycle and a down cycle. One can look at the history of the uranium price, and you see that it has its ups and downs. The phosphate price, which is related to agricultural fertilizer, the same thing. It has its ups and downs. And when one has a multi-commodity project, it means that being exposed to nuclear energy through uranium, to the agricultural market through phosphate, through vanadium to the steel and green energy storage space, each one of those commodities is likely to be operating on a slightly different cycle. They're going to have their downs at different times, and so if you put those 3 cycles together, you should have a relatively smooth ride. In other words, one shouldn't see huge ups and downs happening in those 3 diverse commodities at any one time. So having the multi-commodity component to a project is a huge advantage, medium to longer term. On the perception side, it does tend to be a little bit of an issue because there are many projects out there where people say, we've got a multi-commodity project here, and they haven't actually demonstrated that they can extract those different commodities from that rock, from that ore. And that's where we differentiate ourselves. At U3O8 Corp, we have gone to huge efforts to demonstrate through extensive metallurgical work, metallurgical testing, both in Canada and in Australia, that shows that we can extract the uranium, the vanadium, the phosphate, and the rare earths from that single rock that would be mined in the future. So, just to make sure that I've answered your question correctly, the multi-commodity is great from a sort of market protection point of view. The fact that those three commodities won't have their ups and downs at exactly the same time, so it allows for a smoother ride. But absolutely critically, we have demonstrated that through our metallurgical test work that we have a very simple process for extracting all of those commodities from the rock, and that's now proven.
Lastly, Richard, one of the things that I was so interested when I was researching your company is the great amount of resource growth that you did in 2011, 2012 so far. Can you tell us about the growth that the company's seen over the past year, and can you tell us about some of the goals for the rest of 2012 and going into 2013?
Jeff, with pleasure. Yeah, we started off 2011 with 7 million pounds of uranium in Guyana only, and we added 21 million pounds uranium in Colombia and 10 million pounds in Argentina, as well as adding some more in Guyana. So the total resource number across those three countries is just shy of 50 million pounds, so a 7 times increase in uranium resources in just over a year, which is pretty dramatic growth. And in 2012, we expect to continue that growth. The Berlin project in Colombia, where our biggest resource of 21 million pounds is at the moment, we're continuing to drill along a trend. The 21 million pounds is in a 3-kilometer section of a 10-kilometer long trend. So our exploration at the moment is just extending along that trend, and very shortly we'll be able to announce results that talk about the uranium potential, and not only uranium, vanadium, and phosphate potential of the rest of that trend, and that will give everyone an indication of the size of the deposit. And then we would start resource drilling, which is just closer spaced drilling between the exploration boreholes to give us the density of information that we need for a resource upgrade. So we expect that on the Berlin project in Colombia, we will be able to easily double that resource through resource drilling, and in fact we believe that project is probably somewhere between 60 and 8 million pounds in size, and we will be able to demonstrate that over the next year or 18 months. The same is true for the deposit in Argentina. The 10 million pound resource was just taken up to a specific point, a specific cutoff date. And since then, we've done exploration around that initial resource and found good uranium vanadium grades and extensions to that deposit. So we feel that we'll be able to update that and grow that resource. And the same is true in Guyana as well. I mentioned that the 16 million pound resource is from 4 of these uranium-bearing veins, and we already have another 6 that we have drilled. We just haven't drilled them to the kind of density that one needs to do a resource estimate. So it's very easy for us to do the infill drilling on those other 6 veins that are just sitting there waiting. In addition to that, we've got a lot of exploration targets in Guyana are a long trend of the areas that we already know are uranium bearing that just need some exploration drilling in them. So on all three projects, there's a lot of exploration upside, and we plan to deliver on that in the short term. So we grew our resources sevenfold in 2011. And we expect to be able to continue to grow the resources very, very quickly through 2012 and 2013 as well. So not only do we expect to emerge from a uranium junior, a classic uranium junior, to the mid-tier exploration or a mid-tier uranium company, but I think that we'll be able to go beyond that to have one of the bigger resources out there in the uranium space.
Well, thank you, Richard, for being here with us today and giving us an introduction to U3O8.
Jeb, thanks very much for having me, and it was an absolute pleasure.